Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
In our last week's session, we covered the tafsir of ayah number 11 and ayah number 12, where the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, they come to the father and they beg him to allow Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam to go with them. And they said, قالوا يا أبانا ما لك لا تأمنا على يوسف وإنا له لناصحون. They said, "O our dear father, why do you not trust us concerning Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam when we are his well-wishers?" And then they said, أرسله معنا غدا يرتع ويلعب وإنا له لحافظون. Send him with us tomorrow so that he can enjoy himself and he can play, and we are his protectors. So they say this very emphatically. And as I mentioned in our last session, that there's a triple emphasis over here. Inna lahu and lanasihun or lahafidhun. So they're asking Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam in a very pressing manner that there is no need for him to worry. There is no internal evil because they are lanasihun. They are his well-wishers. There's no external evil because they are lahafidhun. They are his protectors. And then also we covered last week, we went into this whole tangent of la'ib and the fiqh of la'ib, of playing. And we mentioned the difference between lahu and la'ib. Lahu is something that is completely forbidden or at least discouraged in Islam. It's a complete waste of time. And la'ib, which means playing, it is something that is allowed occasionally in moderate quantities. And I actually give examples from the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, some of which are mentioned either explicitly or implicitly in the tradition of the Prophet ﷺ. Examples like running, horse racing, archery, fencing, wrestling, weightlifting, swimming. All of this comes under la'ib, and this is something that is allowed. And then I also mentioned some of the conditions that have to be fulfilled in order for this to be allowed. If some of these conditions or one of them is not being fulfilled, then la'ib would not be allowed, it would not be permitted. So for example, it cannot involve gambling, it cannot distract a person from his obligations, he must wear proper clothing that conforms to the sharia, so on and so forth. So this was the summary of our last session. Now inshallah we'll move on to the 13th ayah. So now the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, now that they have eliminated all of the excuses of Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, at this point Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam could have easily said, okay fine, I can allow Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam to go with you. But still he feels reluctant. There's still something in his heart. And this in Arabic is called firasa, instinct. He still doesn't feel right. He knows that there is something wrong. And this is a very, very deep concept of firasa, what is called a gut instinct, or like having a sixth sense. Okay, Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in a hadith, "Ittaqu firasat al-mu'min fa-innahu yanzuru bi nuri Allah ta'ala." Be aware of the firasa, the farsightedness of the believer, because he sees with the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Firasa means that you look at the person, okay, and not every person has it. The more iman you have, the more you would have this quality. You look at the person, and just by looking at his face, you can kind of know his personality and his character. Okay. Obviously the Sahaba, all of them were known to have firasa. But one Sahabi who was well known with this quality was Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. That looking at the person, he will know his personality. Or looking at the situation, he can come up with some kind of solution to the problem. A lot of times, and this is well known in the books of hadith, that sometimes he would suggest something to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then wahi would come confirming what Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu had said. Okay, there's many examples given. Allama Sayyidi rahimahullah mentions over a dozen examples. Okay, where Umar bin Khattab would say something to the Prophet ﷺ, and then wahi would come. Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam would come with wahi that was similar to what he had suggested. The famous examples are of hijab. He suggested to the Prophet ﷺ that the ummahatul mu'mineen and the believing women, they should start wearing, the hijab. Because all types of people, they come and enter the house of the Prophet ﷺ, and he felt that they should start wearing the hijab. And immediately after that, Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam came down with the verses of hijab. At one point he asked the Prophet ﷺ that after one performs tawaf, that the maqam Ibrahim, the station of Ibrahim, should be taken as a musalla, as a place of prayer. And immediately after that, Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam came with the ayah, وَاتَّخِذُوا مِن مَقَامِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ مُصَلَّى. Take the station of Ibrahim as a place of prayer. That's why it's part of the rituals of tawaf, that after you finish circumambulating the Kaaba 7 times, you come to Maqam Ibrahim and you pray 2 rak'ahs. And there's many other examples like these as well, where Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, after Badr, he asked the Sahaba, he asked their mashwara as to what should be done with the captives. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu gave a very lenient opinion, where Umar al-Khattab radiallahu anhu said something that was very harsh. So Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam took the position of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. And he said, "Oh Abu Bakr, you remind me of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam and Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, that they were very soft in nature. And oh Umar, you remind me of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam and Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam." Okay, their personality was very strong and different than that of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam and Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. And then the wahi actually came confirming the position of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So this is firasa. Ittaqu firasat al-mu'min فَإِنَّهُ يَنْظُرُ بِنُورِ اللَّهِ ta'ala. Sometime a person comes to you, perhaps he offers you a job or something, and everything seems good, but something in your heart tells you, no, there's something wrong with this. Okay, it's like you are having a sixth sense. Okay, everything outwardly seems to be good, but you know that there's something wrong, and this is firasa, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives this to certain people. Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, obviously being a prophet, and knowing his children, he has this firasa, and so he presents one more excuse. Okay, he says, and this is ayah number 13, it says, قَالَ إِنِّي لَيَحْزُنُنِي أَن تَذْهَبُوا بِهِ وَأَخَافُ أَن يَأْكُلَهُ الذِّئْبُ وَأَنْتُمْ عَنْهُ غَافِلُونَ. He says, verily it grieves me that you should take him away, and I fear that a wolf might devour him while you are heedless, you are careless, you're not paying any attention to Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. So he says, it grieves me that you should take him away. And this shows the love that Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam had for Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. He cannot even bear to be without him for a day or even less than a day. And subhanAllah, there is an even deeper meaning here. That would I not be grieved even more if you take him away forever? Okay, we know that they took him, not permanently, but at least for 30 or 40 years. If you take him away, I will be grieved. And he's giving this message to them indirectly. The brothers, on the other hand, thought that if they get rid of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, that the father will give full attention to them. But we know the exact opposite happens. And he gives them the warning, if you take him away, I would be grieved. And we know that he goes into so much grief that eventually because of that, Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam becomes blind. But the brothers, the sons, they do not heed this advice and they have deaf ears. قَالَ إِنِّي لَيَحْزُنُنِي أَن تَذْهَبُوا بِهِ وَأَخَافُ أَن يَأْكُلَهُ الذِّئْبُ. And I fear that a wolf might devour him. Now what is the meaning of wolf over here? Okay, scholars have mentioned different things. Some scholars have said that perhaps it is not referring to a wolf literally, but Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, speaking figuratively, he's actually referring to the brothers. That I fear one of you who are like wolves for him, one of you might hurt him, might attack him, might do something to him. So this is what some have said, that it is a reference to the brothers, they are like wolves for Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. Others have said that no, it's possible it could have a literal meaning, okay? Because they were living in Canaan, which is the ancient name of Palestine, Syria, and the surrounding area. This is the ancient name, and that was a place of wilderness, and there was perhaps a lot of wild animals, coyotes, wolves, and these kind of animals. So there was perhaps a genuine fear of wolves. So that's why he said, I fear that a wolf might devour him. However, the majority of the scholars, they say that the reason Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam said this was that this was actually a form of tawriya. Okay? He did not have a genuine fear of wolves, but he just wanted to present some excuse so that they can stop begging Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, and he would not allow Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam to go with them. Now what is tawriya? Let me explain what tawriya is. Tawriya means that you equivocate. You say something that has a double meaning. Okay? It has two meanings. You say a phrase, it has two meanings. One meaning is more common, more apparent. And the listener, he understands that meaning. But you actually intend the other meaning, which is not so common. You say this to avoid lying. And obviously you don't say this all the time. Only in certain situations and circumstances, you can say this. The most famous example is of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. When the people, they ask him to go along with them to celebrate the festival, what does he say? Inni saqim. I am sick. So they thought that perhaps he has some physical ailment, so therefore they let him stay back. But what he really meant was, that I'm sick and tired of everything that you're worshipping besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He did not say marid, he said I'm saqim. Okay, and the word could be applied to this. But the more apparent meaning that they understood was that he has some kind of physical ailment. Or for example, the king of Egypt, when he was, anyone that would pass by, he would take, if a person was going with his wife, that person, he would take, the person, kill him and take the wife of the person. So when Ibrahim ﷺ was going along with Sarah and they were passing by that place, the king, he asks Ibrahim ﷺ, when he's captured, he asks him who Sarah is. And what does he say? He knows that if he says it is his wife, that he will be killed and that Sarah will be taken. So what he says is that she is my sister. Sister what? Sister in Islam. Okay? And that's fine. We're all the children of Adam ﷺ, and all of us are related. So this is called tawriyah, which is you're not lying, but you're saying something that has a meaning that the listener doesn't understand immediately. Another example from the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, when Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu was migrating with the Prophet ﷺ, and we know that they were going on a very unique route, okay? Because they had placed a bounty on their heads that anyone who finds the Prophet ﷺ, or Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, dead or alive, would have a reward of 100 camels. So this one person, he was very anxious, very eager to, get this prize. And he recognizes and he finds Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, but he does not recognize the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so he asks Abu Bakr, he said, who is this person with you? And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he says, هذا رجل يهدني إلى الطريق. This is the person who is showing me the path. Okay? Meaning he's showing me the path towards Jannah, Sirat al-Mustaqim. The other person, obviously not being a Muslim, he took the apparent meaning that because they're using a very unique route, perhaps he's his mountain guide and showing him the way around. But what he actually meant is, he is showing me Sirat al-Mustaqim. There's another example, and there's many examples like these. And this is something you cannot use all of the time, obviously, because then you'll be deceiving people. This is only in certain circumstances that you can say, in situation of fear of life and death. There's a story that once a king, he wanted to, he had a warrant of arrest for this one person, okay? And he was an innocent person, he hadn't done anything, and he was actually a scholar. So he sent his soldiers to arrest him, and they come to his masjid, okay? And they actually come, the soldiers come, they know about his whereabouts and where he is in the masjid, but they have never seen him face to face. So they come and they start speaking to the person that they're looking for. Okay, the imam that they're looking for, and they say that, do you know such and such person, the imam of such and such masjid, the imam of this masjid, do you know where he is? So he's sitting there, he's by the pillar, so he just moves a little bit from the pillar, and he tells them, yes, the person you're asking me was just here a few seconds ago, but he left now, he moved from this place now. So this is called tawriyah. This is allowed in certain cases, but not all of the time. Okay, so he says, إِنِّي لَيَحْزُنِنِي, verily it grieves me that you should take him away. And I fear that a wolf might devour him. He just uses this as an excuse. I fear that a wolf might devour him. Also, we learn from this that this phrase that Yaqub ﷺ uses is later on used by the brothers. Okay? They use the same excuse, this very same flimsy excuse. They use this again, which shows that they had not planned out everything. They're planning everything as it goes along. So they were not mature in their planning. Just like most of the criminals, they don't think 3 or 4 or 5 steps ahead. They just say, okay, let's just do everything, and then never think of the consequences of what's going to happen. So he says, إِنِّي لَيَحْزُنِنِي أَن تَذْهَبُوا بِهِ, verily it grieves me that you should take him away. وَأَخَافُ أَن يَأْكُلَهُ الذِّئْبُ, and I fear that a wolf might devour him. وَأَنْتُمْ عَنْهُ غَافِلُونَ, while you'll be heedless or careless about him. Next ayah number 14. قالوا, they said, لَإِنْ أَكَلَهُ الذِّئْبُ وَنَحْنُ عُصْبَةٌ إِنَّا إِذًا لَخَاسِرُونَ. They said, if a wolf was to devour him, وَنَحْنُ عُصْبَةٌ, while we are a strong group, then in that case we're losers. We're indeed losers. How is it possible a wolf would come and we're all together, we're a strong group, we're 10 of us. The word usba is used for a group of 10 or more people. The English equivalent of usba will be gang. But gang has a negative connotation to it. But this is what it means. It means a strong group. So we're 10 brothers, we are always helping each other. How is it possible a wolf will come in our midst and take him away? We're the ones who take care of all the needs of of the family. We graze the animals, we bring them back, we water them. We do all of this, and we're strong and healthy, and we're a strong group. So how can a wolf come and take him away? Ayah number 15. فَلَمَّا ذَهَبُوا بِهِ وَأَجْمَعُوا أَن يَجْعَلُوهُ فِي غَيَابَةِ الْجُبِّ. So when they took him, and all of them agreed to throw him into the bottom of the well, and then the sentence doesn't finish, and I'll explain why. وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِ. And then we revealed unto him, لَتُنَبِّئَنَّهُمْ بِأَمْرِهِمْ هَذَا. Of a surety, you will inform them of this matter of theirs. وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. While they know not. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't finish the sentence. And this is very common in Arabic and especially in the Quran. That sometimes you have missing phrases, missing words. And when you read the translation, it causes some confusion. And this is what you call it loss in translation. This is actually a type of balagha, a type of rhetoric, a type of eloquence in the Quran. But that's in Arabic. Arabic has a different grammar. When you translate it, the target language will have a different grammar, different rules of grammar. So it is actually seen as a form of eloquence in that language, but in English it would be seen as a grammatical mistake. And this is what you call lost in translation. And this is why you cannot just only simply read the translation. Okay, you have to try to learn the Arabic. I mean, just for basic and elementary understanding of the Quran, yes, you can read the translation. But remember, when you read the translation, you're not reading the Quran. You're not reading the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran is in Arabic. When it is translated, it doesn't remain the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala anymore, because it is translated by a human being. So when they took him, and all of them agreed, أَن يَجْعَلُوهُ فِي غَيَابَةِ الْجُبِّ, to throw him into the bottom of the well. Sentence doesn't finish, and then it goes on to the next. Why is the sentence not finished? Two reasons. One is, number one, it is understood they did what they did. Okay? When they all agreed to throw him into the well, and they did what they did. Okay? The rest is understood. Even in English we have this, because in Arabic you don't mention every single thing all the time, because if it is understood, there's no need to kind of repeat it over again and again. Just like in English, a lot of times we have this, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes we also have missing phrases in English too. One example is, when someone asks you a question, you don't always respond with a complete sentence. You just answer with a word. Someone asks you, where are you from? You don't say, I am from Florida. You just say, Florida. Who are these three people? You just mention, Zayd, Amr, and Khalid. You don't say, these three people that you're asking me about, their names are Zayd, Amr, and Khalid. What is your name? You just say Ahmed. We don't say, my name is Ahmed. Just by saying one word, we understand, although it is not a complete sentence, but from the context that the person is asking a question and you answering immediately, therefore that can be avoided, that can be removed. Same thing in the Quran, and it's more common in the Quran. I just gave that as an example, so you have a general idea, but it's a lot more common, and there's different types of examples in the Quran. That sometimes the phrases are missing, and this is one reason. The second reason scholars mention is that the details are so painful that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not mention them. Okay? فَلَمَّا ذَهَبُوا بِهِ, when they took him and all of them agreed to place him into the well. And that's it. It finishes there. It doesn't mention the details because it's so painful to hear it. It is said in some reports they took Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, and as they took him from the father, they hugged him and kissed him and they put him on their shoulders and they're all happy. But as soon as they go far away and they're away from the sight of Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, they throw him on the ground. And then they're going and he's trying to catch up to them because he's very young and he's thinking that he's gonna enjoy and have fun time with his older brothers. But they go, and as they're going, they start mocking him, making fun of him. They start joking with him sarcastically, and they start even beating him. And eventually, when they reach the well, then he realizes what's happening. They take him, take his shirt off, and they tie him to a rope, and they start to lower him into the well. And then he's begging and he's pleading, and he's trying to hold on to the wall of the well. But they hit his hand and they push him into the well. And he's begging, he's pleading with all of them, but none of them have any sympathy in their hearts for Yusuf alayhi salatu, who's still a young child who hasn't done anything to them. Okay, and they know the love that their father has for Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. But still, despite all of this, this is what the brothers do to Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. So because the details are very painful, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not mention it. There's also another very powerful point that we learn from this ayah. And that is, the evil actions of the brothers are never mentioned in detail. And nor does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ever criticize the brothers directly. Okay? So the evil actions of the brothers are never described in detail. Even though they did this act, okay, which was a major sin, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not mention it in detail. And number two, they're never criticized directly. Why is that so? One of the reasons scholars mention is that any type of crime or anything that is evil, bad, is never mentioned in detail in the Quran. Okay? Something that is bad, evil, or even if it is not haram, but it's something not very noble, the details are not mentioned in the Quran because it's not appropriate for the language of the Quran. Okay? I'll give examples not related to this. When it comes to wudu, when it comes to tayammum, when should you do wudu, when should you do tayammum? When there's no water, then you do tayammum. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the different states that a person may be in and the times when you're supposed to do wudu or tayammum. So one of them is أَوْ جَاءَ أَحَدٌ مِّنكُم مِّنَ الْغَائِطِ, when one of you comes from the restroom. It doesn't say when one of you defecates and one of you urinates. These details are not mentioned. It doesn't even say when you use the bathroom. It says when one of you comes from the bathroom. Because the language of the Quran is very majestic, it's very noble. So these details are not mentioned. Or when it says أَوْ لَامَسْتُمُ النِّسَاءِ, or when you touch women. It doesn't even say when you're intimate with your spouse. But when you touch women and you do not find water, then you do wudu. Okay, these things, even the things that are very, very sensitive and the things that are very difficult to explain, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions it very beautifully through parables. Even the topic of a person, being intimate with his spouse, even that is mentioned in the Quran, but through a very beautiful parable. نِسَاؤُكُمْ حَرْثٌ لَكُمْ, that your wives are like a tilth, like a garden for you. Okay? That you have a farm, you have a garden, and the whole purpose is to grow crops. Okay? And same thing, Rasulullah said that you should marry a woman so that they can bear you children. تَزَوَّجُ الْوَدُودُ الْوَدُودُ وَلُودٌ وَدُودٌ. Marry a woman that will bear you children and that are very loving. فَإِنِّي مُكَاثِرٌ بِكُمُ الْأُمَمَ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. So even things that pertain to this are mentioned in a very beautiful manner through parables. Compare this to other scriptures. It's a completely different story. Because it has been mistranslated and some of it perhaps is not even the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is not the word of Allah, we know that. But even the translation is most likely not a remnants of the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so when you read some of that, if you were to read it, you'll be ashamed to actually show that to anyone else. You would never dare to actually tell your children or your daughter or your son to actually read that. It is so explicit when it comes to this, very vulgar and very, very explicit. But the Quran is not like that. The Quran is much higher and much nobler than that. Another point is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never directly criticized the brothers, even though they did this major sin. Okay? They kidnapped Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, and at one point they were even planning to murder him. But not once does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses a negative adjective for them. Never once does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala call them fasiqun or al-zalimun or al-mujrimun, the criminals or the unjust or the sinners. Even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses this adjective for others. When it comes to the mushrikun, those who associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those who deny the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses these type of adjectives. But when it comes to the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, not a single negative adjective is used for them. Now the question is why? They did this crime and it's a major crime. So how come Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not speak of them in this manner? And scholars, they answer this by saying, the reason for this is because we know of them that at the end they repented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because they repented, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not mention their crime. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not mention their mistake. The only time their mistake is mentioned is to their own tongue. When they actually come to Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam and they said, لَقَدْ آثَرَكَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا وَإِنَّا كُنَّا لَخَاطِئِينَ. We are the ones who have made a mistake. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not criticize them. Why? Because they have already repented. التَّائِبُ مِنَ الذَّنْبِ كَمَنْ لَا ذَنْبَ لَهُ. The one who repents from a sin is like the one who hasn't committed that sin at all. We as human beings, we can forgive, but we can never forget. Okay? We can forgive, but we can never forget. But for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He forgives and He forgets. By forgetting, I mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not bring that thing back again. On the Day of Judgment, even the angels who wrote your deeds, even it will be wiped from the records and it will be wiped from the memory. And your own limbs will not be able to testify against you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is what He tells us to do. فَعَفُوا وَاسْفَحُوا. Forgive and forget. وَاسْفَحُوا means turn the other page from safha. فَعَفُوا وَاسْفَحُوا. But generally speaking, our nature is different, that we forgive, but we can never forget. So anyway, as I was saying that, generally speaking, the Quran, all of these details are not mentioned because it is inappropriate. It doesn't need to be mentioned. As opposed to nowadays, any type of vulgarity, any type of crime, murder, rape, the news will report it in the most vivid detail. Books will be made out of them, and movies will be made, and so on and so forth. And the more, they say that the more the news spread, the reason why crime spread is because the news of crime spread. Okay? When you give people all of these details, you're giving them ideas. So therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not mention all of this, does not mention what exactly they did to Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. فَلَمَّا ذَهَبُوا بِهِ. When they took him, وَأَجْمَعُوا, and all of them agreed to throw him into the bottom of the well. غَيَابَةِ الْجُبْ. Ghayab means from ghaib, the unseen. So the bottom of the well cannot be easily seen from the top. So therefore it's called ghayab. Al-jub means a well which is not well constructed, as opposed to al-bi'r. So when all of them agreed to place him into the bottom of the well, and then he moves on to the next phrase. وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِ. You see now? You understand the beauty of it? فَلَمَّا ذَهَبُوا بِهِ وَأَجْمَعُوا أَن يَجْعَلُوا فِي غَيَابَةِ الْجُبِّ. When they took him, and all of them agreed to place him into the bottom of the well, it stops there. You fill in the blanks. It moves on to the next phrase. وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِ. And then we revealed unto him, لَتُنَبِّئَنَّهُمْ بِأَمْرِهِمْ هَذَا هُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. That surely you will inform them of this matter of theirs while they know not. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and we revealed unto him. What is him referring to? Okay, which pronoun? Is it referring to Yaqub alayhi salam, or is it referring to Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam? So some of the scholars, and this is the opinion of the minority, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam. We revealed unto Yaqub alayhi salam that you would inform your children of what they're doing to Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. But this is not a very strong opinion. But there's a reason why they say this. They said that it has to be Yaqub alayhi salam. It cannot be Yusuf alayhi salam, because the word wahi is used. And we know that wahi is given to prophets at the age of 40. And right now Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam is a child. Okay? Wahi is not given to children except unless it is an exceptional case. Like Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, he received wahi and prophethood when he was in the cradle. But generally speaking, a prophet has to reach the age of 40 to receive wahi. And right now Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam is still a child. So therefore, there's some scholars who say this is a reference to Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam. But the majority of the scholars say no, this is a reference to Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. Okay? It cannot be a reference to Yaqub alayhi salam because the ayah is talking about Yusuf alayhi salam. Whenever you have a name and there's a pronoun that comes after it, that pronoun will go back to the last name. Just like in English, we're telling a story and we said this person did this. Zayd went to the store, Umar went to the masjid, then he came back. When you say he came back, that he goes back to the last name. So same thing, this ayah is talking about Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, so the pronoun must go back to Yusuf alayhi salam. Then the question is, how do you answer that objection? That Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam is still a young child, so how could he be receiving revelation? And the answer to this is, wahi, revelation or inspiration, is of different types. Imam ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawzi rahimahullah mentions there are 6 types of wahi, 6 types of revelation. The highest form of revelation is that which makes a person a prophet. And then you have the lowest form of revelation, which is given to everything. Everyone and everything, every creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala receives some form of inspiration from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even animals, they receive inspiration from Allah. This is why a fish, when it is born, immediately it knows how to swim. A bird, it knows how to fly. A human being, when it is born, its body knows how to function. Our body has so many different systems, right? We have the circulatory system, you have the nervous system, the digestive system, the skeletal system, all of these systems we have, and they're all working simultaneously. We don't have to think about it. It is receiving some inspiration from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the first type, what we call the natural order of things. Okay, everything is receiving some inspiration from Allah. And then you have the second type of wahi, the third and the fourth and the fifth and the sixth. The sixth is the highest form. One level lower than that is called ilham, which the very righteous people receive. It is an inner thought, an inner voice, and you know it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not every person has it, but some people Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspires them, but they don't become prophets. And the classical example is that of the mother of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. Remember when she was ordered to place Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam in a basket, and Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, that he was supposed to place the basket in, she was supposed to place the basket inside the Nile River. Okay, so this was the case of ilham. So this did not make her a prophetess, but this was wahi and revelation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to the mother of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. So same thing over here, this is of the fifth type. Okay, this is not the type of wahi that made Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam a prophet, but this was of the fifth type. And then he says, لَتُنَبِّئَنَّهُمْ بِأَمْرِهِمْ. Surely you would inform them of this matter of theirs. So again, we said that this is a reference to Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, and Allah is telling them as he's being thrown into the well, as he's being thrown into the darkness of the well, the light and the nur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes, he receives revelation, inspiration, and he says, you would inform them of this matter while they know not. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this to give him some comfort, okay? To give him some consolation. Now, how is this a form of consolation? Well, the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling him that you would tell your brothers what they have done to you, this shows us few things. Number one, that he's not going to die. He's going to live through this. Okay, that's number one. Number two, that he's going to be reunited with his family. Okay, because the only way he can tell his brothers is that if he comes and he's reunited with the family. And number three, that he would have the upper hand. The fact that he's going to tell them and they're not going to know shows that he would have the upper hand. And remember, the surah was revealed to also give consolation to the Prophet ﷺ when he was also rejected by his family, his kith and kin. When the Quraysh, they had boycotted Banu Hashim, and that at one point they even went into, na'udhu billah, assassinating the Prophet ﷺ. And there was also a similar ayah revealed to Rasul ﷺ as well. إِنَّ الَّذِي فَرَضَ عَلَيْكَ الْقُرْآنَ لَرَادُّكَ إِلَى مَعَادٍ. The one who has revealed the Qur'an would surely return you back to your place of abode. And this is when they were migrating, when they're fleeing for their lives, and there's only two of them, and Allah reveals that ayah. And so there's also that same comfort and that same consolation, that the fact that you're going to come back to Makkah shows, number one, you're not going to die, you're not going to be killed. Number two, you'll be reunited with them, and that you would have the upper hand. And we know at Fath Makkah, when he came back, he indeed did have the upper hand. And finally, what we learn from this is that when you know the ultimate end of something, it gives you some comfort and solace. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, he's told of his ultimate end in this dunya, so that gives him some comfort. Okay? When you hear of the ultimate end, you're in high spirits. Now, we obviously are not prophets, and not all of us would know our ultimate end in this dunya. But generally speaking, all of the believers, they know the ultimate end, and that is al-akhirah, paradise, Jannah. Generally speaking, for the believers. So whenever you're in difficulty, in hardship, this is how we benefit from this ayah. Remind yourself of the ultimate end. وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Whenever you're in difficult circumstances, think about Jannah, think about paradise. Once someone asked Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal rahimahullah, he said, when would you rest? When are you going to rest? And he said, I'll rest when my right foot enters Jannah, paradise. Before that, there is no rest. Okay, so this is how we benefit from this ayah. Always think of the ultimate end. وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. And finally, the last ayah, and with this we'll conclude inshallah. وَجَاءُوا أَبَاهُمْ عِشَاءً يَبْكُونَ. And then they come to their father, عِشَاءً, at night, late in the evening, يَبْكُونَ, crying. Okay, so they're showing these false emotions, and this is not difficult for a person who's used to committing a crime, who has an evil heart. He can show these type of emotion. So they're crying before Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam, and they come at night in order to add to the plot, pretending that they were looking for Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, and they'll come very late. So now they're crying. And this shows that you should never really base your judgments on emotions. Okay, you always base your judgment on facts, not on emotions. And there's a very interesting story of a great tabi'i. His name was Shuraih al-Qadi. He was a judge, and he was a very just judge and very wise. And it is said that once a woman came to Shuraih al-Qadi, and she was crying. She was crying and sobbing. And then all of the students of Shuraih al-Qadi, they were sitting, and Shuraih al-Qadi was just dead silent. He did not say anything. And then when she left, the students, they felt embarrassed. They said, Sheikh, at least you could have shown some sympathy to her. Perhaps, she was oppressed, some dhulm was done upon her, maybe she was wrong, but you're dead silent. Show some emotion. She's a woman, perhaps something was done to her. And what does Shaykh al-Qadi, he says, we base our judgments not on emotions, but on facts. Remember the brothers of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, when they came to their father crying, وَجَاءُوا أَبَاهُمْ عِشَاءً يَبْكُونَ. And subhanAllah, it so happened in that particular incident, it came true what Shaykh al-Qadi had said. That woman, she was actually lying, and those were just crocodile tears. You know, the thing was that she was actually guilty of the crime, but those were just her false emotions. So you never base your judgment on emotion, but rather on facts. وَجَاءُوا أَبَاهُمْ عِشَاءً يَبْكُونَ. They came to their father late at night crying. And with this, inshallah, we'll conclude.